Hey everybody, I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 4 English lesson on quotations and dialogues. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts, grade 4. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of quotations and dialogues. All right, so our chapter is quotations and dialogues. The subject is English Language Arts, grade 4. And the lesson that we are going to be focusing on is punctuating dialogues. All right. So when it comes to quotations and dialogues, right? So when you either want to have a conversation or you are writing, and to show basically that there's a conversation between two or more people, and then we need to put those words in quotation marks, right? So when it comes to quotation marks, a quotation, it shows the exact words that the person said, right? So if you were to show that there's a dialogue or conversation between two or more people, and then you want to say the direct words of what the person said, and then you're going to put those words in quotation marks. All right. And so when it also comes to quotation, so when we are writing quotation, right, we need to capitalize the first word because it basically shows the start of what the person is saying, the beginning of the sentence, starting with what the person is saying. All right. So the entire quotation, right? Remember, quotation marks are these two as that sign. Then you have your conversation or your sentence or whatever the person is saying, and then you close quotation mark. So we open quotation mark, and we also close quotation mark, right? So the entire quotation, right, including the end mark. So we start with a capital letter, right? So you'll start with the capital letter, whatever the word is saying, and then it will have either an end mark. It's either going to have a period, it's going to have an exclamation mark, or it's going to have a question mark, depending, right? So the start of the capital letter as well as the end mark, it needs to be or it should be inside of the quotation marks. If we look at an example, right, of a quotation mark, it says, I have to leave now, she said. So I have to leave now, she said. So, which means that as we can see, the start of what the person is saying, it starts with a capital letter, and then it also has, okay, in this case, it has a comma, right? Because we're saying she said, right? But if you look at the next one, it says, where are you going? And that is a question that is being asked, right? So, which means that it starts with a capital letter and it ends with a question mark. And all of that is within the quotation marks. All right. So, if the quotation ends a sentence, right? So, if the quotation ends a sentence like we did over here, then okay, like we did over here, right? And then we just add a comma before it, right? For example, we can say she said. So you can either say you can basically have the conversation and then you say she said or he said, or you can first say he said or she said, I have to leave now, and then we have our end mark, which is either your period, your exclamation mark, or your question mark. Right? Keeping in mind that whenever we either show the exact words that the person is saying, you need to write it within quotation marks, right? And when writing the quotation, we need to capitalize the first word And the entire quotation, this is like literally within these two quotation marks, right? So we start with the capital letter and we end with a period, right? It's either a period, quotation mark, or it's a question mark, right? So we end with a end mark. So both the capitalized first word as well as our end mark needs to be inside of our quotation marks, right? All right, and then also, if our quotation starts a sentence, right? So if the quotation starts a sentence and would normally end in a period, right? Then we need to change the period to a comma. So for example, it says, I have to leave now. So we just put a comma instead of a period. Then we just say, she said. And then if the quotation ends with an exclamation mark, this is an exclamation mark, or a question mark, this is a question mark, then we don't change it to a comma. So which means to say, if I were to tell you that I am going to the shop, right? So I'm telling you that I am going to the shop, right? So now somebody asks, where is Nadine, right? And then you're going to say, she said, you're not going to basically say directly what I said. So you're going to say, she said, open quotation mark, I am going to the shop, right? So if it ends with a period, right, then we just put a, okay, in this case, we're going to put a period and we're going to close it. Unless you say, I'm going to the shop, she said, right? But if our end point or end mark ends with either a quotation mark or a question mark, then we don't change our period to a comma. All right. And then also when it comes to quotation marks, right? Because remember, we're still talking about quotation marks within dialogues, because dialogues is basically a conversation between two or more people, right? So quotations can be used to show a dialogue. It's a conversation, right? A dialogue is a conversation between two or more people. And that is what a quotation shows, because it will mean that I told you something and now you are repeating what I said, right? So if you were to, let's say, if your parent were to ask, okay, so what was the lesson about? And now you're going to say that you'll basically tell her what I said. If you're going to say the words in your exact words, if you're going to say what I said in your words, right? Then you don't have to put anything in quotation marks, right? But as soon as you are going to say what I said directly, and then you need to put that in quotation marks. But of course, if you're talking, you're not going to say quotation mark, open quotation, close quotation. You're not going to say that. But if you were to like write it down or type it or something, then you would open a quotation and directly say what I said. Put out your end mark, close quotation. She said, he said, right? But if you're just going to put it in your own words, then you don't have to put it in a quotation. Like a copycat. Yeah, similar. Because a copycat basically, we would say repeats what the next person said, right? But in this case, it's not necessarily repeating what the person says. It is basically just conveying what the person had said, right? But now just think of if your teacher were to ask you to write a dialogue, right? Because we are actually talking about dialogues and we're talking about quotations. So think of if you were to write a dialogue, right? Remember with a dialogue, if you were to write, imagine this is your page, right? And you're writing a dialogue. This is not a conversation between two people. And then we can say, then remember on the one side, you write with the person's name. So let's say we say peace, right? If I can just, I'm just going to say peace. So now peace says, open quotation mark, I am 10 years old, right? That is what you said directly, right? Then if the next person says something, they also going to say something and it's going to be open quotation mark. Or we can say that B Funk says, right? We can maybe say B Funk says, peace said. Now he opens quotation mark and then he says what the next person had said, right? Because you need to basically show based on the quotation what the next person are saying. All right, so now let's go to aplusstudents.ca and we are going to continue with our quotations and dialogues. But keeping in mind, a dialogue, right, is a conversation between two or more people. It's the same as you guys responding to one another on this chat, right? In the comments, that is basically, let's say for example, like somebody asking how are you and you are saying good, or you're like asking another question. That is already a conversation between two or more people. It is a dialogue. But now if you want to directly say what the next person had said, and then you need to put that in quotation marks, right? All right, so now we are going to our lesson, which is punctuating dialogues. And remember, when it comes to punctuating, then punctuating means we need to put our capital letters where needed, we need to put our commas where needed, we need to put our end marks where needed, which is either your period, your exclamation mark, or your question mark. All right. And we mentioned that quotations, it shows the exact words. And that is why I was saying it shows the exact words that the person is saying. Remember, if it is not your words, right, then it is somebody else, and somebody else said it, it's not your words. You are just repeating. It's like you're saying, like a copycat, repeating what the person had said. So a quotation shows the exact words that a person said. I am not Miss Maria. And when writing a quotation, we need to capitalize the first word. The entire quotation, including the end mark, should also then be inside of the quotation mark. And if your quotation ends a sentence, right, then we need to add a comma before it. So you need to then change your period to a comma, but your comma stays the same and your quotation, your exclamation stays the same. I am Miss Nadine. So I'm Nadine, not Miss Maria. Miss Maria gives maths and I give English. And this is our English class, which Miss Nadine gives. Miss Maria gives maths. No problem. All right, so now it says which one is correct, right? It says, my voice is hoarse from yelling, she whispered, right? So which means that if we were to look at that specific word, right? So here it says, my voice, look at the word. It says the sentence, it says, my voice is hoarse from yelling, period, she whispered. If you look at that sentence, is wherever we put the punctuation mark, is that correct? Remember, we said that the first word needs to be capitalized, so capitalized is correct. It is also within quotation marks, that is correct. But now look at the period. What did we say if a sentence ends with a period? Do we leave it as a period or do we change it to a comma? So if a sentence ends with a period, do we leave it as a period or do we change it to a comma? All right. So if we were to correct that, then remember we said that if our sentence ends with a period, right? And then it means that we need to change it to a comma. So this sentence is incorrect because we need to change that period to a comma. Because it says, my voice is hoarse from yelling, comma, she said. Unless if there was to be a exclamation mark or question mark, then we would have left it the same. It would have stayed the same. But whenever a quotation mark ends with a period, we change it to a comma, right? And no problem. So now we continue and then we will look at the other activities, right? All right, let's look at the next one. All right, it says he said, my cat her wrinkles her nose when she yawns. Look where that period is. Look at where that end mark is. Should the end mark be outside of the quotation mark or should it be inside of the quotation mark? Should the period be inside of the quotation mark or outside of the quotation mark? You see, as we can see, that period is outside of the quotation mark. Is that correct? Or should it be inside of the quotation mark? No, don't be sad. No, don't be sad. Let's look at the next one and then let's try and figure out the next one. Look at the next one, right? It says, he said, my cat wrinkles her nose when she yawns. And then we close the quotation mark and then our period is outside. Should the period be outside or should the period be inside of the quotation mark? All right. And if we were to say if it is correct or not, then we can say, yes, well done. It should be inside, right? So well done. Now, when we write our sentence, or we not necessarily the sentence, but whenever we have our quotation marks, the period or the exclamation mark or the question mark needs to be inside, or even the comma needs to be inside of the quotation mark, not outside. So well done. Inside is correct, but so which means that this sentence is incorrect because we first had to put our period, then quotation mark. So well done. Inside is correct. All right, let's look at the next one. It says, she whispered, my voice is hoarse from yelling. So once again, let's look at the sentence. The period is inside. Is that correct now or is that incorrect? All right. And if we were to choose the correct one, we would say this is correct because we have she whispered, comma, open quotation mark. We have our quotation marks capitalized, the first word, which is my voice is hoarse from yelling. And then we have our period, which is inside. So this is correct. So well done. All right. So now let's go to our test, right? So we're going to our test where we are going to be punctuating dialogues. We need to say what is correct and what is like between the quotations, right? All right. It says, which sentence is correct? My voice is hoarse from yelling, comma, she whispered. Or do we say, my voice is hoarse from yelling, period, she whispered? Option one with a comma or option two, period. Which one is correct? All right, then if we were to choose the correct option, and then we would choose option one. And option one is correct because remember we said that if the quotation, we start with the quotation before he said or she said or they said, right? Then if our sentence were to end with a period, we change the period to a comma. But if a sentence ends with a exclamation mark or it ends with a question mark, and then it stays the same. So well done. All right, it says, I like to hike in I like to hike in nature preserves, period, declared the boy. Or option two, I like to hike in nature preserves, comma, declared the boy. Which one is correct? Option one or option two? Does it end with a period or does it end with a comma? All right, and if we were to choose the correct sentence, right, the sentence that is correct, then yes, we will go with option two, right? Well done, because we said that if our sentence were to end with a period, we change that to a comma. Before he said, she said, they said. Well done. Option two, number two is correct. All right, let's look at the next one. It says, which sentence is correct? Right? Keeping in mind now the words she said, he said in front where the punctuations are. Do we say she said without the comma, the coyote vanished across the prairie, which is option one, or option two, she says with a comma, the coyote vanished across the prairie? Which option is correct? Do we say she says without any punctuation or she says with a comma? Option two. So we need to say which option is correct. Option one, or do we say option two is correct? Option one without a punctuation before a quotation mark, or option two with a comma before the quotation marks. All right, and if we were to choose the correct one, we would go with option two. So option two is correct. So well done. Option two is correct because we need to, for example, say he say, she say, comma, then a quotation mark. So well done. All right. So once again, we need to choose the correct answer. The which sentence is correct? Is it option one? The committee is rewriting our town's parking laws, period, he explained. Or option two, which says the committee is rewriting our town's parking laws, comma, he explained. So option one or option two. Thank you, Peace. Thank you. All right, if we were to choose the correct one, then yes, we will choose option two, right? Because we said that we do not end it with a period, but it needs to change into a comma unless it is a exclamation mark or it's a question mark, then we leave it like that. But we write our sentence, and if the sentence were to end in a period, we change it to a comma. So option two is correct. So well done. And thank you. Option two is correct. Which sentence is correct? Is it option one, which says the basement bathroom leaks, comma, he claimed, or option two, which says the basement bathroom leaks, period, he claimed? So we need to choose the correct sentence, right? By choosing the correct punctuation mark. Do we end with a comma, which is option one, or a period, which is option two? All right. And if we were to choose the correct option, then yes, we will go with option one, right? Ends with a comma and not a period. So well done. All right, let's look at the next one. The next one says, Mr. Burnett said, they, so Mr. Burnett said, comma, they made butter using a churn from the local farm, period, inside of the quotation mark, or option two that says Mr. Burnett said they made butter using churn from the local farm, and the period is outside of the quotation mark. Which one is correct? Option one, where the period is inside of the quotation mark, or option two, where the period is outside of the quotation mark? So we need to choose the correct one. Is it option one or option two? And if we were to choose the correct option, then the correct one is option one, because remember your end mark needs to be inside of the quotation mark, not outside, right? All right. Let's go into the next one. The next one says, it's time, it's time to begin our experiment, comma, announced the scientist. Or option two, it's time to begin our experiment. The comma is outside of the quotation mark, announced the scientist. Option one or option two? Which one is correct? Should the comma be inside of the quotation mark or outside of the quotation mark? All right, then if we were to choose the correct one, we would choose option one. So well done. All right, let's do the last one. It says, which sentence is correct? Option one, the geese look so funny waddling across the road, and the comma is outside of the quotation mark, Christina giggled. Or option two, the geese look so funny waddling across the road, Christina giggled, and the comma is inside of the quotation mark. Which one is correct? Option one, our comma is outside of the quotation mark, or option two, the quotation is inside. The comma is inside of the quotation mark. All right, and if we were to choose the correct one, we will choose option two. All right, so that is now the end of our lesson on quotations and dialogues. Remember, we said a dialogue is a conversation between two or more people, right? And when we want to show either a conversation, right, or a dialogue or something, then it means that we need to, for example, write our whatever you want to say that the person said directly. If you want to repeat what the person said directly, then we need to use quotation marks. Quotation marks needs to start with a capital letter and it needs to end with an end mark. If it ends with a period, right, and then we need to change it to a comma. But if it ends with a exclamation mark or comma, then it stays the same. And remember, your end mark needs to be inside of your quotation mark, right? That's very hard. So I start 11 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I wake up at 6 o'clock and I go to my own job. So it's very hard. I'm extremely tired. So I take a nap after my day job because I'm a teacher during the day. I teach grade fours at a public school. So I come home and then I mark and I do whatever I need to do and then I take a nap and then I wake up and then I start teaching from 11 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the morning and then I'm up 6 o'clock again in the morning for my day job. Yes, my full-time job is a teacher. I'm a teacher. But guys, you must have a good evening further. Goodbye.